Hey friends, if you happen to be walking around the library, you might walk past the image that's right over my shoulder here, and you might look at it and be like, what is that? It kind of looks like the periodic table of the elements, but yet it has all these words from the Bible written on it. And today I want to find out exactly what this is, because I think if you hang in there, you're going to find that it's actually pretty interesting. So I've brought in the best person I know to talk about this particular piece of art, our dean, Allan Black. Dr. Black, what is this?
This is a diagram that sort of shows the relationship of the big sections of what we call the Synoptic Gospels, and that's Matthew and Mark and Luke. And we call them synoptic because they take a similar point of view and have a lot of overlap. Now over here, where you might think John is just Matthew repeated. So it's Matthew, Mark, Luke, and Matthew.
And so it works by chapter going down. And so Mark in the middle here, 16 chapters. And the interesting thing is that it's coded by color. And so tell us a little bit about, I'm reading Mark, and occasionally it's always in pink, but then it goes over to green. What does it mean when it's in pink? And then how does that relate to the pink that's in Matthew and in Luke?
Okay, let me make a short remark about the chapters. You see how short Mark is with 16 chapters. This is an inch for every 35 verses. And so Mark is a lot shorter, Matthew is the next longest, and you notice that Luke is the longest of all. And then the color coding goes through section by section, like say the temptations of Jesus, or the story of the parable of the sower. And if it is in either Matthew or Luke and Mark, it's in pink. If it's in only Mark, it's in green. And so when you look at the Mark column here, you see that nearly everything in Mark is absorbed in either Matthew or Luke or both.
And so this is an observation that's been made by people as they read the Gospels. They've said, this story is in multiple Gospels and gets told in a very similar way, or sometimes in a little bit of a different way. And so that's been the observation that's made when I see it in other places. It has the color pink for the example of Mark. Now over here in Luke, though, I'm seeing a lot of yellow. What's the story there?
The yellow is stuff that appears only in Luke. So the pink is Mark and either Matthew or Luke or both. The yellow is only in Luke. The white is only in Matthew. The blue, and that's why you have Matthew over here again, is in Matthew and Luke, but not in Mark. And so these two give you the possibility of comparing the stuff that's in Matthew and Luke, but not in Mark. That's in blue.
And that section of material has a name that you introduced me to, and that a lot of people might have heard floating around. What is that called?
It's called Q.
Q.
Just a letter.
Just a letter. If you want to know more about Q, we're going to tell you more about Q, but we're going to talk a little bit about this. But in a future episode, we're going to tell you more about what Q is. But I do have a question as we go back to the yellow. And so if you see that something is just in Luke, or maybe if it's over here and it's just in Matthew, you said before, like, ooh, you can kind of figure out what the writer of a gospel, what kind of makes their heart beat. Why do you say that? Why is it what you would say, oh, if you look at the yellow in Luke, you can tell his particular interests?
Well, Luke has 1,150 verses. Over 500, over half of that is only in Luke. So it's stuff that he was especially interested in telling us about. And a lot of it's stuff we really know well, like the Good Samaritan parable, or the parable of the prodigal son. Some of those occur only in Luke. And notice that Luke has a very long account of the birth of John the Baptist and Jesus and the very early part of Jesus' life. And then he has a lot of yellow in this particular area, which is the journey to Jerusalem. It starts here and it ends about here. And then he has just yellow in the story of the resurrection. So those are kind of the main places that he's thrown in the stuff that is just Luke.
The Good Samaritan, the prodigal son, the rich man and Lazarus. This is great
That's
stuff.
right.
And he just had to say that he knew the gospel could be told without using those. He knew it from this, but the way he wanted it told could only be told using that.
Yeah, it seems like he's got a special interest in telling us about Jesus' attention to marginal people, like you would see in the Good Samaritan or like you'd see in the prodigal son. And he's also, with you pointing out the rich man Lazarus or the rich fool, he's got a special interest in what rich people do with their money.
Okay, there is. So next time you walk past this, if you see something like this, by the way, this was produced by Allan, Barr.
That's
and
right.
So this is kind of like when I said the table of the elements. This is kind of what we're looking at here. And you can just stare at this thing, make all kinds of judgments. And if you ever want a picture of this, we can even take a picture of it and send it to you. If that'd be a resource for you, we can give you a snapshot of something you're working on. We'd be happy to do that. But most importantly, I want you to tune in next time because we're going to talk a little bit about this thing called Q. That way, next time you hear about it, you're not like, what are they talking about? Did they just make this up? So please join us next time. Dr. Black and I will stand right here, tell you a little bit more. We'll see you next time.